Good evening, distinguished colleagues. I hope that everybody has joined. We've been waiting for 8 minutes. Distinguished colleagues, I wish you good evening. We are starting the 8th seminar within the framework of the project Media Literacy for Librarians and specialists of public and national libraries, as well as colleagues from libraries of schools, colleges, and universities in all regions of the Republic will participate in the project. The project is supported by a grant from the American Corners program of the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Cultural and Educational Programs. On behalf of all the librarians involved in the project, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the American Corners Program and the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Cultural and Educational Programs for their financial support. Thank you very much. Without the grant, we would not have been able to provide such a wide scope for project implementation. Today's meeting is attended by the specialist in the Public Diplomacy Department of the U.S. Embassy in Astana, Sarah Smith, and the head of the Kazakhstani American Corners Network Association, and the chairwoman of the association, Pirizat Utibalieva. Another important feature of the project is that its partner is the American Library Association, namely head of the International Relations Department of the American Library Association, Mr. Michael Dowling. We're very happy to see you, Michael. Thanks to Michael, great speakers, high-level professionals, and real experts in their field participated in the project. Like previous webinars, Michael is with us today. Michael, I am personally very glad to have met you, and through you, we have learned a lot, and we have met wonderful experts in the field of media literacy. Thank you for your work and for your contribution. At the request of our participants, we decided to dedicate the last 2 webinars to the issues of focusing the library on the needs of the local community and being fully open to all the residents. In a previous webinar, our colleagues from the Public Library in Madison, Wisconsin, talked about the program, which is called The Bubbler, to create unique creative spaces in public libraries. The topic of our meeting today is Let's Partner, how your library can create collaborations that work. This is the topic of our today's webinar, and this will be presented by our speaker, Joyce Garczynski. She's an Assistant University Librarian for Communication and Digital Scholarship at Towson University's Albert Cook Library in Maryland, USA. You're welcome, Joyce. However, since we have the last webinar today, within this project, before we begin, I would like to give the floor to a public diplomacy specialist at the U.S. Embassy in Astana, Madam Sarah Smith.
Thank you so much, Bibiko. Yes, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. Whether this is the first of these webinars that you have joined or whether you've been here for all 8, it's very exciting to see so many librarians and library professionals from across Kazakhstan who've been joining us for this series of seminars. The turnout for these has been really extraordinary from the start when this program first started in December. So it's very exciting to see how much interest there is in the topics that you've put together. So I would like to thank, first of all, Bibiko, you for organizing this series of webinars. I know that you've put a lot of thought and a lot of energy into organizing this program, into selecting the topics, and into thinking about what would be interesting for your audience here in Kazakhstan and what kind of US expertise we could bring to your colleagues here in Kazakhstan. So I want to thank you first and foremost for that and for your time in putting this together. I would also like to repeat what you have said just a moment ago. I would like to thank Michael from the American Library Association for joining you in this program and for bringing some US expertise to bear to this project. And I'd like to thank Joyce for joining us today. For offering this seminar. I'm sure it will be interesting. I have no doubt. I can't wait to hear what it is that you have to say. And I'm sure that I speak for everyone who's on the call in saying that. So I won't take up much of everybody's time. I just wanted to thank again everybody for joining us tonight. Whether it's the first time or the 8th time you're joining us for a webinar, I hope that you get a lot out of it. I hope that it's interesting, as I know all of them have been. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues who have much more interesting information to share with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for your kind words. And I would like to say I would like to express my gratitude for financial support of our project. Now I would like to give the floor to the Director of International Affairs, American Library Association, Mr. Michael Dowling. I'm very grateful for your partnership. And the floor is yours, Michael.
Thank you very much, Bibogolno. It's been a great opportunity for the American Library Association to partner with you and Parazat and to work to bring forward a number of colleagues in the United States to interact with colleagues in Kazakhstan on these important issues that are global issues that we're all trying as librarians to deal with and to work together to help our communities. And so with that, I just want to thank everybody. It's been just a great experience, and I look forward to collaborating with colleagues in Kazakhstan on other opportunities. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Bibogol.
Rahmet, Michael. Thank you, Michael. We are very happy to work with you. We hope that our cooperation will continue in the future. Thank you very much, distinguished colleagues. Now it's time for our new topic. I would like to invite the webinar speaker, Joyce Garczynski. Joyce coordinates the library's program of cooperation with local residents and she's an expert in fundraising, and she's the author of the books about fundraising, one of which is called How to Raise Money for Your Library Using Social Media, and also Fundraising for Academic Libraries, a practical guide for librarians. And she's author of these two books related to fundraising. Today, Joyce shares her experience of how libraries can build successful partnership projects. If you have any questions to the speaker, you can write them in the chat box, and the speaker will answer your questions after the presentation. Then we will take a photo. We will save the recording of the webinar and post it on YouTube channel, and we will send you a link. And now, with great respect, I would like to give the floor to our speaker, Joyce Garczynski. Joyce, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you today. I really appreciate this wonderful series that you all have put together. And I am so appreciative to be able to be a part of it and share something that is so close to my heart and that I'm so passionate about, which is community engagement and creating partnerships. So I'm going to share my screen here. And I am Joyce Garczynski. I'm the Assistant University Librarian for Communication and Digital Scholarship at Towson University in Maryland. And if you like, if you have any questions after this is done, please don't hesitate to reach out to me through email is probably the best way to get in touch. So let's get started. So I'd like to start with a poll question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read off some statements, and whichever one you identify with the most, please put that number in chat. So my library has few to no partnerships, so I really want to know where to begin. Or my library has a few partnerships, but I want ones that are more beneficial. My library has too many partnerships, and I need to know how to prioritize. Or something else, and I'll explain briefly in the chat. So just enter what number you identify with. Seeing a couple ones. Okay. But there are also some 3s and some 2s in there. That's good. Okay. Some 1s and some 2s coming in. Just give it a couple more seconds. Some 1s and some 2s, mostly. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for sharing where you're at. This is really helpful. And the good news is that today we're going to touch on all of these. So whether you're just getting started or whether you have a lot of experience with partnerships, there's going to be something in this discussion for you today. Okay, so here's where we're going today. First, I'm going to talk about how you get started, where to begin, because it can seem really overwhelming when you first start. And so having sort of that focus can really help get you on the right track from the very beginning. We're going to talk about how to prioritize partnerships and really where to concentrate your efforts so that you have the most beneficial partnerships that you can. We're also going to talk about the partnership life cycle and sort of how partnerships evolve over time and how to take advantage of that. Also, what should you do when you get stuck? Sometimes partnerships don't always turn out the way that you want them to. And so where do you go from there? We're going to talk about assessment. So how do you know if a partnership's working or not? And also, how do you tie this into fundraising? How do you use partnerships to be able to raise money for your library? So I want to share a little bit of my story and how I got started with partnerships. So I've been at my library for the last almost 14 years. And the very first day that I started, I walked in to my dean's office in the library. And basically what the dean said was, congratulations on your new position. Now, we have to celebrate Constitution Day in 2 weeks. And so we need a program in order to do this. In the United States, any education institution that receives money from the federal government is required to celebrate our Constitution. So we had to do something. And so I was thrown right into it. And so what I did was I turned to some partners on campus and off to help me create my first programs. And what ended up happening was some of those early partnerships ended up becoming a whole lot of partnerships. And I built my library's community engagement program based on some of those early partnerships. So what ends up happening is one partnership can turn into many very quickly. And that's kind of what ended up happening with me. Ultimately, I've raised close to $100,000 in grants for events and programs at my library. And each dollar that I've raised has had a community partnership attached to it. So very much fundraising and partnerships go hand in hand together. And that's been my experience from the beginning. And now we partner pretty much for every event and every program that we do. So partnerships are very much embedded in the work that we do. And this picture of me here is from an exhibition that we had. We received from the American Library Association, actually. It was an exhibit to celebrate the poetess Emma Lazarus, who wrote the poem that's on the base of our Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." And so we had an exhibit, a traveling exhibit that we were hosting, and we were selected to host this based on the partnerships that we created. So yeah, partnerships are very much embedded in my story and in the story of programming at my library. I want to talk about my first partnership and how that really blossomed into lots of partnerships. So what happened is back in 2009, when I first started at my library, we had just brought in a Jewish studies collection. A local university, Baltimore Hebrew University, had recently closed, and we had acquired their collection. So this was a brand new collection to us. We wanted to highlight that we had this collection. And so, and we wanted to celebrate that we had this collection. So what I did was I reached out to a faculty member at my institution who was leading a study abroad trip. He was taking approximately 20 students to visit Auschwitz, the Holocaust concentration camp in Poland. And what I did was I reached out to the faculty member and convinced him to have his students take pictures of their visit and write reflections based on their visits. So what stuck out to them, what really mattered to them during their visit. And so what I did was I had these reflections and these photographs blown up and mounted and on display in the library. And I tied those into our new Jewish studies collection. So I also had images. I also had items from this new collection on display. So that was sort of my first partnership that I created. It was to help promote this new collection. And so I brought in additional partners too, to help fund some of this work. So I reached out to our Center for Teaching and Learning that we have at our university, and was able to get them to sponsor the artwork that would go into the exhibition. So blowing up the photographs and mounting them. They were one of our partners. I also worked with the Jewish student organization on campus to help promote this exhibition, to encourage students to come in and see the exhibition. So I brought in interested parties. Of course, nothing always runs smoothly when it comes to partnerships and exhibitions. And some of the challenges that I faced were those poster printing costs. Initially, I was looking at a bill quite possibly around $1,000, but thankfully I was able to find a partner who was willing to share this cost. And also one of the challenges was the building restrictions. In our library, the building manager didn't want to mount posters on the wall. And so we had to find a creative solution to display the students' photographs. We ended up hanging them from the ceiling, believe it or not. And so trying to find those creative solutions is so very important when it comes to partnerships. So ultimately what happened was that we were able to capitalize on this first exhibition, because what happened is that I was able to use this successful exhibition in future grant applications for national exhibitions. So to bring in that Emma Lazarus exhibition, what I did was I wrote about this first partnership. And so it helped really blossom into bigger exhibitions that I could bring into my library. So ultimately, what I learned from this was really it's important to start small and local, because what that does is it enables you to build a track record in what you're doing and building those partnerships. I was all for this first exhibition. I only used internal partners. I didn't have anyone outside of my university that I turned to. And then later on, I showed that this was successful and was able to capitalize on this smaller partnerships. And also, I think partnerships really work best when they're mutually beneficial, meaning there was something that my library was able to benefit from because of this partnership. We were able to show off this new collection and help bring it to the community, but also our partners were able to benefit too. So the Center for Teaching and Learning, we thanked them on every piece of material that we put out related to the exhibition. And so they got their name out there to everyone who was seeing the exhibition. Also, the Jewish student group was able to reach more students because they saw their names on all of the materials as well. And so it was a nice outreach for them too. So it was beneficial for everybody. And I think that's when partnerships really work, is when you can find opportunities that really do benefit all the partners. And a lot of times there's unexpected challenges in the details, but having this larger strategy of how can I create partnerships that are mutually beneficial and that serve our larger strategic plan for our organization really can help guide the partnerships that you do create. So where do you begin? How do you start? Well, I think one of the first things I really recommend that you do is start with what's known as a SWOT analysis. That looks at your organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the strengths and weaknesses work as a pair. Basically, you want to ask, what are the strengths and weaknesses of your organization? What do you do well or not so well compared to other libraries that are in your area and other providers of information? So how do you do? What do you do better than anybody? We had that brand new Jewish Studies collection. It's one of the largest collections in Southeast United States for Jewish studies. That was definitely a strength. And so we wanted to highlight that. Also, think about what's unique, and what's not so unique about your library. That will give you a sense of what you can approach other partners with. Also, you want to look at what are the opportunities and the threats in the environment where your organization is. So what's external that you can leverage or you might need to work around? What are some of the challenges in the larger environment that you need to address? So in the United States, at the moment, anti-Semitism is a challenge, certainly, and it's in the larger environment. And it gives us the opportunity to be able to address some of those challenges with this new collection. So you want to look at that larger environment and what are some of those opportunities and threats that you can have an impact on. And sometimes those opportunities and threats can be the same thing. I know for our library, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that our building is right in the heart of campus, right in the center. It's a great opportunity in that our building is always busy. We have tens of thousands of students who come through our doors each week. So we're great at reaching our community. But the problem is there's no parking around our building. It's really hard for the community to come and visit us physically. And so our location is both a challenge, it's a threat, and it's also an opportunity. So you really want to get that sense of your organization. What's unique that you have to offer? And also, what are some of the challenges that you're going to need help in addressing? Because knowing that landscape will help you define what partnerships you really need to reach out to and to start, or in some cases even stop. So I highly recommend, if you haven't, to do that SWOT analysis for your organization. Then you want to conduct an internal needs assessment that's anchored in that SWOT analysis. So you want to begin looking internally and examine what your library and your users need that you currently aren't providing. What's missing from your library internally? What would you like to have? What do your users need that you currently can't do on your own? So some of the ways to get at this are to talk with leadership, find out sort of what their priorities are. What are they looking at doing that they're not already doing? Also talk with staff. A lot of times the staff at your library, they're the ones who on the front lines see what the challenges are and what needs our patrons, our users coming to you with that you don't know about. And also you can survey your users or your customers to find out what they wish that you were doing. So an example of this in our library is that if you were to walk around our library, you would see a lot of blank walls. We've recently done a whole lot of renovations, and so we don't have a lot of art. It's kind of uninspiring, unfortunately. And so what we did was we started to partner with art classes at our university. And so at the end of the semester, students would donate their art and we display it in the library. Also, what we did too is that the American Library Association produces these templates for read posters that promote reading. And you can take photographs of leaders in your community with their favorite books and put the read template over the photograph to promote reading. And it is such a great opportunity to work with leaders in your community because you can talk with them about, oh, what's your favorite book? What do you like to read? It's an opportunity to bring them into your organization, bring them into your library, to take their picture and just talk to them. You can give them a tour too, to show them all of what you're doing. It's really a great way to connect with local leaders. So we've really taken advantage of that. We've heard our users say, these blank walls aren't very inspiring. We'd love to see some art. And so we've developed these partnerships with the local community to really help liven up our space. And these internal partnerships can really take a lot of different forms. They can help you build spaces. So about 2 years ago, I noticed that a lot of students were coming to us needing help with data analysis, data visualization. They were having lots of assignments that required this heavy computing power, and they didn't have the technology in order to be able to efficiently complete their assignments. So I partnered with our Office of Technology Services, and I found a donor who who donated money to help us build a space in our library, which we now call our data studio. This consists of four individual workstations and one group workstation. And our library is open 24/7. And so students can come in at any time and work on their assignments. So these partnerships really help meet the needs of students. And also collections too. One of the challenges that we were facing is that we didn't have very much in the way of Islamic materials. And so we wanted to add to our collection in that area. And I received a grant from another American Library Association grant called Muslim Journeys, which enabled us to bring in book discussion groups. I partnered with faculty to discuss some of these books. We added them to our collection, and we were recognized on campus for having made these additions, which helped bring in additional support to add to our collections. So there are lots of ways that partnerships can help you fill the gaps in your library. So ultimately, what you want to do is think about, who will benefit from this new space or collection, or who's going to benefit if this new thing is created. And that will give you a sense as to who you should reach out to, who your partners should be. Then you want to look at the flip side of this and conduct an external needs assessment that's also anchored in that SWOT. So you want to start examining what potential partners need and how you can help meet their needs too. So you want to talk with community organizations and participate at community events. One of my favorite things to do is to go out into the community and meet with potential partners. We have on our campus a lot of opportunities where we're trying to reach out to new students, or we're trying to reach out to the community to share what we do, as a library and as a university. And one of my favorite things to do is to get there early and talk to the other organizations that are also at these events, because you get a sense as to what they're doing, what their needs are, what their concerns are. And it can inspire you for how you want to partner. So how this manifested in my own partnerships was before the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, my university used to host a community arts day. And that's where they would open up the art galleries that we have on campus, and would have art activities for area children to come in and do some arts and crafts that are related to the exhibition. And I have kids of my own, and so I took them to this event, and I talked to the organizers of the event. And I realized quickly that they really wanted to build up this event. They wanted to add more components to it, to really make it more engaging so people would stay longer. And so, knowing that my library has a children's collection, I suggested, hi, why don't we partner so that we could do story time with some of the books from our children's collection. They loved that idea because story times last a while. We did some crafts related to the story. And we got to promote our collection too to the larger community. So it was a win-win. And it really helped the Community Arts Day organizers meet their objectives too. And it helped us too. And this also can take lots of different forms. For example, with services, our career center at our university was really struggling to meet students and provide resume reviews for students. At the time, their location was kind of off to the side on campus and not in a place where a lot of students went. And so we offered to them to come into our library and do resume reviews. They love that idea. And it wouldn't be uncommon for them to review like 20 resumes in an hour. All they had to do was connect with the students in the place where the students were. And we enabled them to do that. And it helped bring more people into the library too. Also, they can take the form of programs. There's a statewide reading program in Maryland called the One Maryland One Book. It's where everyone in the state reads the same book during the months in the fall here. And so we've partnered with an organization called Maryland Humanities to help support their One Maryland One Book program. So we'll hold book discussions to help Maryland Humanities reach more people with their program. So in terms of helping to meet the needs of community partners, you want to think of what do you offer that would be beneficial to those partners. I mean, us knowing that we are in the heart of campus, we are better at reaching students pretty much than any other component on campus. And so we leverage that when building partnerships. If there's a community organization that wants to reach students, you know, they want to partner with us. And so we leverage that to our benefit. And so the answer to that question of how can you benefit partners will help you know what to pitch to the community partners you want to work with. So after you've done your SWOT and your internal and external needs assessment, you want to make a partnership plan. You want to strategize about who you're going to partner with. So really, libraries have the, they really can partner with anyone and everyone, but that's not effective. We all have limited resources like time, money. So while theoretically we can partner with everybody, practically we can't. And so what you need to think about is how are you going to set priorities for your partnerships? And at the end of the day, I think there are three things that should help you set those priorities. So if you have a lot of partners, one of the first things you want to do is look at your organization's strategic plan. What is it that your organization is going to try to accomplish in the next year, 5 years, 10 years? What are your main goals? And will that partnership get you to those goals? That's the question that you want to answer. If the answer is no, then that should be a partnership that you may want to wait on or pull back on. So at the end of the day, you really want to look at what are your organization's goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And how will that partnership get you to that goal? Also, funding is an important consideration in this. I wish it wasn't, I wish that we had the ability, to partner with everybody, but at the end of the day, we have to go where the funding is. Partnerships and events cost money. And so being able to fund these partnerships is important. So you have to consider funding. And you also have to consider your calendar too. Are the partnerships, do they have events that all fall at the same time? You can only give so much energy and your time away to so many things. And so you also want to look at your calendar. Can you feasibly, logistically fulfill your end of that partnership? If the answer is no, it may have to wait. So I want to share a story of a partnership that we've prioritized that really fulfills all three of these criteria. And so as a result, we've really invested in this partnership. So the Human Library, if you're not familiar, it's an international organization that brings people together for a conversation about identity. So basically what you have are people who serve as books in the Human Library, and these books represent different identities. So you may have someone who, say, is Jewish and what is interested in speaking about that identity. And so they would be a book in the Human Library. And then they would be checked out as readers by readers for a conversation about that identity. And so they'd come together in conversation. So for the last few years, we've hosted a Human Library event at our university. All you have to do is pay for a license from the Human Library organization to host one of these events. But we've partnered with our Center for Student Diversity at my university in order to host the Human Library event. Now, we have partnered with the Center for Student Diversity quite a bit. The reason being is that expanding diversity, equity, and inclusion are very much an important part of our university strategic plan and our library strategic plan. So we are looking to host events that further that objective in our strategic plan. Human Library fits that bill. It enables us to further diversity, equity, and inclusion at our university. And so, as a result, the Center for Student Diversity, because of their mission, they're very well funded to host programs. And so we partner with them to take advantage of that funding and to further our shared mission. Now, we host these Human Library events at a time that works for our calendar. Generally, as a library, we're most busy in September and February. So we tend not to host events during that time frame. Instead, we host it at the end of October. And so that helps us maximize our participation, and we can really give our full attention to the event. So the Human Library, because it meets our objectives in the strategic plan, it helps us promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. We can partner with an organization that has funding to support diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that makes our costs minimal. And it works with our calendar. Timing wise, Human Library is a great partner. Center for Student Diversity is a great partner for the Human Library. So also, when you're making your plan, you want to consider the partnership life cycle. And I'll talk about that life cycle next. So different partnerships have different life cycles. Some are just a single program. Excuse me. Some are just a single program or event where you only partner with that organization once, and when that event's done, you don't partner with them again. That happened with us and the Walters Art Museum. When we received that Muslim Journeys grant that I was talking about, we partnered with a local art museum in Baltimore, which is the city we're located by, called the Walters Art Museum. They have an extensive Islamic art collection. And so we partnered with them to bring some of our students down to see their art exhibition. And it was an opportunity for them to reach a new audience. They typically hadn't reached out to our university students, and so they were excited by that. We could promote our Muslim Journeys collection to those students who were interested. But what ended up happening is that after that event, after that tour, we really didn't partner again. So that event lasted just the span, or that partnership lasted just the span of that one event. Other partnerships are recurring partnerships that you have a variety of projects with. So Maryland Humanities that I spoke of earlier, we've partnered with them on the One Maryland One book. We've also partnered with them on a project called Maryland History Day, where we have partnered with them to serve as judges in this local competition, where students create projects about history. It's kind of like a science fair, but related to history. So there's a theme, students create projects, and they're always looking for judges to help support the competition. And we've ended up hosting the local competition because we've been so involved in other projects. So with them, we keep partnering on various other things. So there are different life cycles for different partners. And before starting a partnership, it's a good idea to have a sense as to what you want that partnership to be. Do you want it to be just a one-time thing? Or do you want it to evolve and change and grow over time? So it may depend on some of those other things, like, do they fit in your strategic plan? Do they offer funding? Etc. So it doesn't always turn out the way you want it to, but it's good to think about, is this a one-time thing or will it evolve and change? So let's talk about these different areas of the partnership life cycle, these different phases. So first is making that connection, the initiation of the partnership. So first, you want to contact the potential partner. You want to reach out to try and make that connection. If you are cold calling them or reaching out to them, for the first time, mention any connections that you have to them. So if someone referred you to them, mention that in the initial contact. Say, oh, I know that so-and-so, and they suggested I reach out to you. So forming that mutual connection can be really important. And then you'd like to provide an overview of what you're thinking about for why you'd like to partner and how you're thinking you might work together. But you also want to appear that you're open to feedback on that. So you don't want to say, oh, I really want to partner with you this way, this thing, this is exactly what I want you to do. You want to leave it open so that they feel like it really is a partnership and that they're contributing. So you might say, oh, I was thinking, we have this event coming up and it fits with what you're doing too. And so I was thinking we might partner. How does that sound to you? Do you have additional ideas for how we might work together on this? That feels a whole lot better than being told what to do. So I think going in open to potential feedback is so very important. And then you want to set up a time to meet and discuss those details further. So how can we come together to solidify that relationship? Always ask in writing, even if the connection is made in person. So if you're going to a community event and you just so happen to meet up with the person who's the head of the organization that you want to partner with, you can talk to them at that event, but then follow up with an email that says, I'd like to meet with you and discuss this partnership further. And we did this with the Jewish Museum of Maryland, where I had a connection to their board. My father-in-law actually sits on their board. And so I reached out to the head of their education division. I mentioned that connection and said, can we meet to discuss this further of how we can partner for an exhibition that we're going to receive, that we're applying for, this Emma Lazarus exhibit. And that worked out great. We ended up partnering with them for that exhibit and for some future exhibitions as well. So yeah, I think this approach of being open to potential feedback and then setting up another time to meet and hammer out the details really works well for starting a partnership. Then you want to plan the partnership. And this is where you have that meeting. You want to start by meeting to review what you're potentially partnering with them on. So fill in some of those details. If it's, for example, an exhibition, tell them what the dates are, tell them what you're thinking in terms of programming. But also, again, note that you're open to ideas, that you're open to suggestions for how you might partner in other ways that you, as you're learning about this organization. Also, here is where you want to ask them if they have any other connections. Are there other organizations that you think might be interested in what we're doing and that might be interested in partnering too? You'd be surprised. A lot of times one door will open many. And so this can be a great way to start other partnerships too. And also here is where you want to hammer out the details. So plan out a timeline for the partnership. Who's going to do what? Who's going to support this event or program or space in what way? Also, what's key, how do the partners want to be acknowledged? You want to get that defined as quickly as you possibly can, because if you end up not acknowledging a partner in the way that they want to be acknowledged, it can be incredibly problematic. So ask. I highly recommend you ask up front. You can say, is it sufficient that we write the name of your organization in the program? Would you be okay with us announcing your support of this program at the start of the event? Hammer that out at the very beginning, because that way it's clear, and it will save you problems later on down the line. An example of this that worked really well was I received a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities to host a film series called Latino Americans. And what I did when I was working on the application is I had a meeting with the head of our Center for Student Diversity. And I said, I sat down and said, I'm applying for this film series, and here's kind of what we're thinking of doing. And he stopped me and he said, I know like 6 faculty members who are going to be really interested in this. I'm on the board of this community organization who's going to be very interested in this. Let's have another meeting in 2 weeks. We'll bring everybody together and we'll hammer this out. We'll get everything ironed out and you'll be ready to write that application. And that's exactly what he did. And so we ended up getting this film series because I was open to the way that, his entry into that community and to building additional partnerships. And so that worked out really well. And so here's, we've arrived at the big day, the event. What the partnership culminates in. And I just want to warn you, it's this period that's so very stressful. It's often where the partnership can break down, and it's often in between the planning and the actual event or the actual, like space opening or the collection arriving, especially if you haven't sort of solidified those details. That's where there can be a misunderstanding. And so having frequent communications, check-ins with partners helps stop that breakdown. And you often want to plan redundant systems in case your partner starts disappearing. Hopefully that won't happen to you, but I've heard of instances, it hasn't happened to me, but I've heard of instances where, you have initial enthusiasm for an idea, and then the partner disappears, whether because of circumstances that's happening in their organization or challenges, and they're not doing their part of the work. And so what may end up happening is that you have to have to backfill and do the work that they were unable to do. So I think it's a really good idea to just plan in case something happens, so that the event or program or space will still happen, even if the partnership disintegrates. Make sure you acknowledge your partner in the way they want to be acknowledged. So very critical. If you had agreed that you're going to acknowledge them at the start of the event, make sure that you do that. And an example of this in my own library is our academic commons. So just this last October, we opened a space on our main floor that is a central hub for all of our academic support services at the library. And we had what's pictured here, a ribbon cutting for that brand new space. We had to work with all of the units on campus that are part of this new space. And so we coordinated with them to host this event, this ribbon cutting. And we ended up doing a like a carnival afterwards, so that students could go around and meet the partners and see what kind of services they offered. There were some challenges in that, the other units on campus were just moving into this brand new space. And so a ribbon cutting wasn't their priority in a lot of ways. They were very much focused on getting settled. And so we had to work around that, and in a lot of ways plan in case they didn't participate. So how could we communicate for them if they didn't participate? But it ended up working out great. We had a wonderful event. And yeah, so there was a lot of stress, but we made it work. And I think that's what partnerships are all about. So how do you know if a partnership is working? Should you partner again? It's a really good idea to meet with your partners after an event or an opening, or the creation of a brand new space, to determine what worked well and what didn't. It can be challenging to have these conversations, but I think it's healthy in any relationship to assess what's going on. And so I highly recommend you meet with your partner and talk about it, and decide if you want to continue the partnership or expand to a new project. Sometimes partnerships naturally ebb and flow. There can be a pause in partnerships. I know even with some of our regular partners like Maryland Humanities, they're very much centered around particular programs and particular events. And so, once that event's done, there's a pause in the partnership until we run it again. And so that's okay. That's okay to have those natural pauses. And you really want to be careful about burning bridges. Even if a partnership was the absolute worst disaster of a partnership, just let it go. Don't, go and tell everyone about it. Just, things happen. It can be hard to let it go, but sometimes you just have to. And who knows, there might be a change in leadership at an organization, and the partnership will end up, working out again later. So in terms of pauses, we've had quite a few with Baltimore County Public Library. We've partnered with them on various events, both theirs and ours, to help support one another. So like they've had exhibitions and we've promoted them to campus. They've also come and done tabling at our library to sign up college students for public library cards so they can check out material. We've partnered quite a bit with one another. And so that's been great. But we've also had lots of pauses in our relationship. So I'll meet usually about once or twice a year with the head of adult programming for Baltimore County Public Library. And we'll talk about what's coming up and ways we can partner. But, it's not like we are constantly meeting. So there's a pattern, there's an ebb and flow to our relationship. And there are natural pauses, and that's okay. What's the connection to fundraising? So grants from local, state, or even national organizations for specific events are often the reasons I've started partnerships. Going after grants, these short-term opportunities for funding have been the reasons I've formed partnerships. As I've mentioned previously, I started small, started local, and then progressed to bigger things. So if you can show that you can do a small partnership well, that will be a reason that you can go to an organization that's with funding opportunities and say, you should fund me because I did this related thing very well. And often what has ended up happening is these are short-term partnerships. For the duration of the grant, you work together, and then you may not work together again, like what happened with the Walters Art Museum. So, and that's okay. So you also want to be thinking about sustainability with grant funding, meaning what's going to happen when the funding runs out? How are you going to keep this program going after the money from the grant agency runs out? So an example of how we did this was the exhibition that's pictured here called Forget Me Not. This is an exhibit of stories of children from Germany during the Holocaust. So what happened was, one day I was at my desk and I got a phone call from a community member who said, I'm part of this exhibition that was put together by high school students in Germany, and I'm hoping that you can bring it to the United States. I've seen that you have this Jewish studies collection. Can you do this? And so I thought about, how am I going to get funding to just bring these panels in that are in German to the United States? That's not going to be so helpful to my audience. So what I did was I took the program and flipped it, in that I got, instead of funding to bring the panels to the United States, I got funding to translate the panels into English and create an English copy that would live at our library. And I got funding to turn the exhibit into a teaching tool that we could then take to local schools to continue the education. So instead of it being a one-time thing, this exhibition, we've been bringing it out into our community for the last 3 years. And so you want to be thinking about, how do I keep funding going even beyond, or how do I keep the program going even after the funding runs out? So I wanted to conclude with some ideas for partnerships that I've seen work well at my library and also at other area libraries. So one of the things we do whenever we have a speaker on campus is we pull books from our collection and put them on display to help promote the speaker who's coming. We also partner with student musicians to play jazz music in the library once a month. Another great idea is to have a community art gallery. So to bring in local artists to sell their work. We've also partnered with a local food pantry to help support students who are hungry in the library, who have food insecurity and can't afford food. So they have food to eat, and it also helps get resources out into the community. Also bringing in local authors too, showcasing local authors works well. I've seen work well at my university and out in the community, competitions for students with sponsored prizes. So my university has a data analysis competition that's sponsored by a local company. And so that company provides the data to students to analyze and visualize using the software in our data studio. And they also provide prizes to the students who create the best visualizations. And so it's a great partnership to be able to build connections with local businesses too. I've also seen work really well with schools is to have field trips to the library. We have lots of middle school groups and high school groups come into the library to do their research. And so that's a great way to make connections with local schools and local organizations. Also, you want to consider partnerships with local businesses where they'll sell certain items and the proceeds will go to the library. I know this local bakery that for a month, they created special cupcakes in honor of the local public library. And part of the proceeds would then go to the library. What else also I've seen work really well is support for small businesses. So having sort of a craft fair or a small business fair, or providing research for small businesses through your research support. Because what happens is if one of those businesses does really well, they'll remember that they got their start thanks to your work and thanks to the library. And so that can be a great way to build support. Job fairs as well, helping your your users find jobs. Those are great stories that you can share. Also, we've had luck with shared collections. So partnering with other libraries that have collections that you don't have, so that you can share them back and forth with your users. That's a great way to reach additional people. And also, we've had a lot of luck too with special collections, meaning where we preserve local history. So if you have people who have photographs, old photographs, come in and they can scan them in to create digital copies, and you can add them to your special collections. So to make them more widely accessible, and also to preserve the history of your community. That's a great opportunity to partner and to get grants to share your community history. So to review, I recommend that you start small. Start with a small partnership that's local within your organization to establish that track record. Can then conduct a SWOT and a needs assessment before you begin some of that larger partnering. How can you best meet the needs of your organization and also the needs of your community? Set priorities for your partnerships based on your strategic plan. So what are the goals for your organization? Funding and your calendar. Those logistics are important. And consider how partnership can be mutually beneficial before beginning. Make sure it's a win-win for everybody, because that's what helps sustain the work. The partnership life cycle is going to vary from partner to partner. And it's okay if it evolves over time, that you have partnerships that's, you may have sustained over events and then becomes a one and done. It's okay. It evolves, it changes. That's what happens. And partnerships can be the basis for fundraising. But you need to consider, how are you going to sustain this program even after the funding ends? So what questions do you have? I'm happy to entertain questions at this time.
Рахмет, Joyce ханым, тамаша презентация.
Thank you very much. A very good presentation, a very important and interesting presentation. And the colleagues have also written that planning is most important before you do something. And for any librarian, fundraising and finding resources for implementing some projects is a very important topic. I would like to thank you for sharing your experience. Okay, let's ask our questions. There are some questions in the chat box. And this is related to what you have said. We are actually practicing some of the instruments you have mentioned. And as for questions, let's say that our colleagues have made several attempts to raise funds, but none of them have been successful. What would you suggest in such a situation? You have told already that we have to plan before making a partnership. But anyway, that's a question. If you make several attempts to raise funds, but none of them is successful, then what to do next? What do you think about this? What do we have to do?
Sure. I think a lot of it depends on sort of where you're going. and looking for funds, are there established grant programs? I know that we've had a lot of luck with local community funding. So there are in the United States local organizations that fund work happening within that community. And so we've had a lot of luck with that. Also, what I really recommend that you do is if there is something that you want funds for, write up a one-page synopsis of that program and why you need funds. And so you can carry that around with you and send that out relatively quickly to potential funders to pique their interest. Right now, we are working on a project to digitize and catalog some World War II books. And we've been hitting a dead end with that project, trying to get federal funding in the United States for that project. And so what we did was we wrote up this one-page document that, is basically our argument for why this project needs to be conducted. A very, very heartfelt plea, basically. And our university's foundation contact, this is a person who, specifically raises money with foundations who give grants, took that one-page document out to her connections and initially got a whole lot of no's. Said, oh, it sounds really interesting, but we're already committed. So then she asked, well, if you can't support it, who do you recommend that we talk to? Who might be able to support it? And so they recommended another group who could fund it. And it was ultimately that other group that funded the project. So I think if you're getting a lot of no's, ask for recommendations for who might fund it, because that can help you build that connection to potentially who might fund it.
Рахмет, Joyce.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Our colleagues have also written. It's very hard to find sponsors for school libraries. Joyce, in your opinion, what projects and programs need to be developed to have permanent sponsors, to have not one-time relationship? You have told that it's quite difficult because some partnerships can be just for one project or for one event. What kind of projects and what programs are better to have kind of a more long-time relationship? Sabayeva Guljan Nurgaliyevna's question. That's Guljan's question.
Sure, yeah. I think that a lot of times you're going to have to start out with those one-time relationships, and then that can build into something more permanent. We've seen that with some of the sponsors at our university, where they'll fund a small project here, and then they'll go and fund another project, and then another project, and they just keep funding things. And then ultimately, they write us into their will. So after they die, there's an endowment for us. So it may be that you have to approach approach it with starting small for that one-time thing, and then proving to them that you can do the small thing before it becomes more permanent. That has been my experience as to what works in that direction. As for school libraries, I think you're going to have a bit more luck with support from the community. I think I've seen that work really well. So with local small businesses that want to support schools, I've seen that work really well. So to provide supplies and reading materials. I've also seen it work really well with vendors, actually. So those companies that provide, databases and other software too. They're often willing to support school libraries too, because they know the business and they know what it takes to get school libraries off the ground. So yeah, I've seen success in that way.
Рахмет, Джойс ханым. Тағы бір қызықты
Thank you
сұрақ.
very much. One more interesting question here. Share your best fundraising success story. Was it successful because you have received a lot of money out of this, or you have overcome some obstacles, or there was some special moment that helped you find a sponsor? Could you please share your best fundraising success story?
I think my my best one is the most recent one, where as I hinted at earlier, so we are looking to create this catalog of what's called JCR books. They're Jewish Cultural Reconstruction books. These are books that were confiscated by the Nazis during World War II. And what happened was, when the Allies came and liberated Europe, they came across these storehouses of materials that were confiscated from the Jewish people. And so they were eventually redistributed around the world to various Jewish institutions. And so what we've done is we've cataloged the books that we received. When the Baltimore Hebrew University closed and we received their collection, we cataloged all of those Jewish cultural reconstruction books that we had. And we started going out into our local community to share the story of these books. They have markings, Nazi swastikas on them. In some cases, these books were, damaged. And what we found out is, with talking with other institutions who have these books, is that most libraries that have these books don't know that they have them. They're not cataloged, and they're in danger of being thrown away because libraries don't know that they have them. And so the story of the Holocaust is in danger of being forgotten. I have gone to various funders and been told no. These books aren't rare. These books aren't special enough. These books, what's the point? Why should we fund this? We can't fund it. And so that kind of made me more determined, honestly. I wrote that this one-page document. I poured my heart into that one-page document to make the argument that these books are endangered and we need funding to save them now before they get thrown away. And at first we were told no, again, no. And so it was finally making that connection. Hearing no, but who do you know that might be interested? And we ended up connecting with some Jewish leaders in Los Angeles, clear across the United States. No one that we ever would have had a connection with. But it worked. And so now we've gotten more funding for that project than we had initially asked for from the US federal government. So I think, one of the keys to success is not giving up, continuing to make those connections, and just having a passion for the work, and being willing to share that passion. I think funders can see when you really care about a project and when you really want it to happen, not just because, it's a dollar amount that's going to your organization and not somebody else, but because you really care about the work. And so I really think that makes all the difference.
Джойс, мына әріптестеріміз Қарағанды облысынан айтып
Thank you
жатыр.
very much. Our colleagues from Karaganda say that
Времен Второй мировой войны. Екінші дүниежүзілік соғыс туралы кітаптарын.
it's very good that you share your experience of protecting the books on the Second World War. And that's a very interesting work. And it shows that the library can do a very important work. And Shulpan, our colleague, has asked, you have told that you have won grant, yeah? And then you shot a book, a film, yeah, a documentary. And what is it called? Could you tell about the documentary series you have made?
Sure. So the what happened was there was a documentary series called Latino Americans that chronicled the history of Latino Americans in the United States. And this documentary was produced by public television in the United States. And so they wanted to get this documentary out to as many people as possible. And not just to show it on their TV stations, but to have scholars and people discuss it, because the Latino American experience in the United States is one that's very fraught, very historically challenging and painful. So just showing it without context doesn't do it justice. So there was a grant program to host, for libraries to host this documentary series and to show the film and to create discussions and other programs around Latino American history and culture. It was a $10,000 grant that you could get. And so we applied for it and we received the grant. We had the film discussion series, and we also partnered with local organizations that support undocumented immigrants. So these are people who come to the United States without without documentation. And so, we wanted to have this local connection to this national film. And so that's how we shared that experience.
Рахмет, Joyce ханым. Өте қызықты.
Thank you very much, Joyce. It was very interesting. And the program you have told about, the projects you have told about is very interesting. One more question. And is fundraising in in US libraries handled by a specific library staff member, or does each staff member seek sponsors for his or her own program? Is it a kind of one person responsible for that, or each one has to do that?
Sure. So it varies. Different libraries handle it differently. In my previous position, I did most of the fundraising for my library. And so I would write the grant applications, I would write the one-pagers, I would write the appeals and things like that. But we're now moving more towards individuals applying for funding for their projects. And I honestly think that that's a better model, because there are certain projects that I know a lot about and I care a lot about. And I find that I can write very well for the things that I care about. But for things that I don't know as much about, it's a struggle to really write those applications well. And so the best person to write an application for funding or to make the case are the people who are going to be impacted by it, the people who are going to be running the program. And so I think that that's a better model, to have the people who are going to be running it write the application, write the materials for it. You can always have an editor review it to make sure that it makes sense. I know when I'm writing, a lot of times the words just kind of pop out because I'm so excited and I want to share that passion. So having an editor is really good to make sure that I know the project really well. And so is this coherent to an outsider who's never heard of this? What I like to do a lot of times is I will, after I've finished writing an application for a grant, I'll hand it off to someone who knows nothing about the project and just ask them to read it to see if it makes any sense. So yeah, I think having that person who's connected to the project do the writing and manage that fundraising, and then have someone who knows nothing about it look at it before it goes in, very important.
Рахмет, Joyce ханым.
Thank you very much. One more question. Could you describe the potential sponsor for library? Are there any kind of special features of the potential sponsor for the library? Who's that?
I think it depends mostly on the project. It varies. I mean, I've raised money from everything from the American Library Association, federal, governmental organizations, local governmental organizations. I've even raised support from the local grocery store, to support students during finals. We they provided snacks and coffee, and we put out a sign that said that they sponsored it. So it's run the gamut. I think libraries are really well positioned in a way to get funding, because we support people, we support students, we support the community, and we are so central to the work, of the community. And so I think what really helps is to gather those stories too of how you've benefited the community that you serve. How do you, for example, help people find jobs? If you're a public library, if you're academic, how have you contributed to student success? Because having those stories, having that data, really supports your case for getting funding from these other organizations. So I really think it depends on the project, and it runs the gamut. Lots of opportunities.
Рахмет, Joyce.
Thank you very much, Joyce. I've looked at the questions. Thank you very much for your replies, Joyce. Let me check the chat box. I think all the questions and suggestions have been addressed, and the colleagues have written their thank yous in the chat box as well. And thank you for the shared experience. If we have more questions, we will send you them. And it seems that the questions are over. So we are concluding today's webinar, the last webinar of our project. On behalf of all participants of the project, we would like to thank our partners, the U.S. Department of State Bureau of Cultural and Educational Programs, American Corners Program, as well as the director of the International Relations Department of the American Library Association, Michael Dowling, the speakers of all the previous webinars, and the speaker of our today's webinar, Joyce Garczynski. I would like to thank you for taking the time to share your experience with Kazakhstani colleagues. I express my gratitude to all of you. And I would like to thank our professional interpreters, Assem Baydildinova and Anna Kabardina, for their professional work and their help in translating webinars. Your work cannot be overestimated, and you have helped us a lot. Distinguished colleagues, I would like to thank all of you for your participation. A link to the recording of the webinar will be posted on our Instagram page. Follow the news on our Instagram page. We hope that the project and its webinars will contribute to your professional development, and we hope that soon we will see you. We'll see that you have practiced what you've learned in media literacy classes, and you will also organize media literacy classes for school children, students, and adults. And I hope that you will be able to find sponsors for your projects, taking into account the information given by Joyce today. Share your news. We'll be always happy to learn about your successes. And we are concluding. I would like to thank Michael and Sarah, and they're all with us from the very beginning. And I would like to thank Joyce. I wish you every success in your work. I wish you good health, every success in your work, and good professional results. Thank you very much. Goodbye.